Welcome to Root Source. I'm Bob Odell, and I am so excited today to be speaking with a friend,
For sure.
Geoff Barnard.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're here.
Well, I am here because this is our home.
And your home is in a certain city in Israel.
Yes.
What is the name of that city?
Well, the city is Arad. We're actually on the very edge of the Negev desert. And actually you can see it from our window here. And it's very interesting that the Lord has actually brought us to live on the edge of the desert, because that's got nothing to do with my background at all.
Oh, yes. Well, just tell people a little bit about Arad. For instance, is Arad in the Bible?
Actually, Arad is mentioned in the Bible. It's actually mentioned in the Torah. Before the days of Joshua, while the children of Israel were still under the leadership of Moses, they have a confrontation, particularly with the king of Arad.
The children of Israel have a confrontation with the king of Arad. Okay.
Yes, but Moses is still the leader. I find that quite interesting, because the general thought is that Moses never entered into the promised land.
Yes.
But there must have been a time when he was very close to Arad, because he had this confrontation, which is described in the Bible. And that's about it, really, except to say that, yes, Arad was a Canaanite city. There is on the outskirts of modern Arad an archaeological site which is called Tel Arad, which goes back to the time of the Canaanite period, but also in the Second Temple period it was a Jewish settlement. And in fact, the archaeological excavation at Tel Arad is very interesting, because within that, certainly within that part which is the Second Temple period, there is a mini type of temple, Holy of Holies even, and it was suggested, or is suggested, that priests in Jerusalem would come to Arad to practice their service.
Really?
It's true.
Really?
This is not mentioned in the Bible,
yeah.
but it is there to be seen at the archaeological site.
Wow. As I drove in today, I drove from Beersheba.
Yes.
And it's sort of green and flat and low in Beersheba, and then you come up over the hills and it gets drier, and you sort of come back down, and Arad is like on this flat place. It's like the last flat cultivated ground before you sort of go down into the Dead Sea Valley. Yeah. It's beautiful.
It has a very interesting location, because we are something like 500 metres above sea level here in Arad.
Okay.
Actually, not where our house is. Not where our house is, because we're really low down towards the desert. But actually, the town itself is at an elevation of about 500 metres, and it has a very similar situation to that of Jerusalem. Actually, if you look on the map and you want to locate Arad, all you need to do is to draw a line south of Jerusalem.
Really?
East of Beersheba, and those lines will cross. Just as Jerusalem is on the edge of the African Rift Valley,
yes,
and you go down
yes.
to the north end of the Dead Sea around Jericho,
yes,
in Arad, we also are on the edge of the African Rift Valley, and we can go down to the southern end of the Dead Sea, probably within the region of where Sodom and Gomorrah and the other cities were.
Right, that's where it has been said that those towns were.
Yes.
There's a little bit of construction going on across the street, and we were talking about that earlier. The town's growing. You think
yes. I mean, the town of Arad was established in the 1960s.
Oh, that's very recent.
It was many pioneers would come out. A lot of them were artists. It is within the city still. They have an artist quarter, and so it's always been known as a place where artists would come, which is interesting because of the friendship which we may mention in just a moment. But the town has really expanded over the last few years. Certainly when the Iron Curtain fell and there was a real upsurge in in Aliyah from the former Soviet Union.
So in the 1990s, yes.
Many Russian-speaking Israelis actually came to live here.
Okay,
and in
interesting.
fact, I'm trying to learn Hebrew slowly. I speak English, of course. If I could speak Russian, I'd really be well off in this city, because something like 40% of the population of Arad are Russian-speaking Israelis.
When I drove in this morning, getting on the way to your neighborhood, there was some Haredi Jews, black hats,
That's
long black coats. Would they be perhaps Russian-speaking as
Some of them will be.
Okay.
Probably many of them will be speaking Yiddish as their mother tongue, so to speak. But that's a very interesting thought, because there are increasing numbers of ultra-Orthodox coming to live in Arad. And there's an interesting story about that, because the chief rabbi of this particular group of ultra-Orthodox Jews suffered from asthma at one point in time. And it is suggested that the air quality in Arad is better than anywhere else in Israel. And he came here, the chief rabbi, came to Arad, realised that it did him good.
Wow.
And from that moment on, this city was identified as a place where the ultra-Orthodox Jews could come to settle. And we have all around where we live many families of ultra-Orthodox. Many of them are really a very extreme, highly Orthodox group, which are called the Hasidei Gua. Now that has created problems for some of the Messianic believers in the town. There has been quite some opposition. It's under control at this time. Personally, I'm thrilled. I want to establish relationships with people that I want to regard as my friends.
Yes.
It's not straightforward to do it, but I really want the opportunity to build bridges with the ultra-Orthodox population.
So you're almost speaking in a mystery, because I haven't asked you about you. So let me move that on and say, so are you a Gentile Christian? Tell us about you.
Yeah, it's a very good question.
Are you from Israel originally?
No, not at all.
Where were you born?
You can tell, I hope, from my accent, that I'm an Englishman, and I'm still proud to be an Englishman, particularly in this day and age.
You're born in a very small town in England, I understand?
Actually, it was on the southern edge of London. So
okay.
I don't think you'd call that a small town.
Very small town, yeah.
But very much in suburbia, at the southern edge of London. I was born into an interesting family, because my father was Jewish. He was a lot older than my mother. He was old enough easily to be my grandfather. And my mother was not Jewish. In fact, she'd been brought up in a Baptist Sunday school setting, and although she hadn't made any real commitment at that time, she certainly wasn't Jewish. In fact, it created some waves within the wider family.
Right.
So I wasn't brought up to be Jewish. Did I have any awareness that my father was Jewish when the days I was growing up? I probably would say no.
Were you brought up with any faith?
No, I wasn't encouraged to go to the synagogue. I never went to the synagogue. I might have gone to church a few times.
That'd be the Church of England, probably.
At one point, that is true. But as a young person, as a teenager at school, a very good school, I did make many Christian friends. And in 1966, in the summer of 1966, an American evangelist was coming to that small town of London.
Yes.
His name is Billy Graham.
Oh, a small-time evangelist to a small-time town.
That is
true. Yeah.
That is true. And many of my Christian friends that I was about 18 at this time, were really, I wouldn't say pestering me, because I wanted to go and hear Billy speak. And in fact, during that month-long series of meetings in June of 1966, I went 5 times. And on the final time that I went, which was close to the end of the series of meetings, I felt that God was speaking to me personally. And I decided to do what Billy asked people to do, to get up out of their seats
Cool.
and go to the front.
Cool.
And my journey of faith began at that point.
Wow.
Lots of things happened since then. But I would say that I became a Christian, and from that moment on, I started going to church.
But you had no idea of your Jewish heritage at that point?
Not really at all. I suppose I was always interested in Israel, and I think one of the very significant things, because my background is in science, and when I left school, I actually went and worked in a research department.
What kind of science is
biochemistry? That would be the sort of science that would be done in a clinical or medical laboratory.
I see.
Developing methods, using methods to measure things that would be in the blood or in the system or in tissues. But the very interesting thing, even though I was hesitant about taking a job in central London, that wasn't my first option. I nevertheless felt it was right to take this job, and it was an extremely Jewish department. Not just Jewish, there were many Israelis in the department.
Interesting.
I didn't
biotech is a big area.
I didn't fully appreciate the significance of that
at the time. Okay.
Except to say this, I joined the staff of that research department in April 1967, which meant I was there.
Oh my goodness.
In June.
Yes.
1967.
Yes.
And for me as a young person, and I was only 19 at the time, I just sat and listened to English Jewish people and Israelis discussing the significance of what was taking place during the Six-Day War.
Yes.
Now, I do believe that had a profound effect on my thinking, because at that point I had only just been a Christian for a year.
Oh, wow.
So I was a very young Christian. And I think the first recorded sermon that I ever heard was a sermon by David Pawson, a British theologian.
Many of our
teacher.
viewers should have heard of David, yeah.
I'm sure that's true. And he spoke about the significance of what was taking place during the Six-Day War.
Wow, wow.
And from that moment on, I had to have had an interest in the nation of Israel. Whether it had an impact on me in the sense that I also had a Jewish father, I don't really know. I can't really remember how significant that was for me. But it was to become much more significant.
Well, when we return, I want to ask you about how you got to Israel.
All right.
And then from there, I want to move to your book.
Okay.
I know you've written several, but I want to talk particularly today about the time of Jacob's trouble, and
Yes.
you have a very interesting view on that. I understand, so
Yes.
I'm looking forward to explore that. So hope you'll stick around and join us when we come back for the next segment. Until then, shalom.